What happens when a society turns away from punishing its criminals? When it no longer cares about the intended purpose of the law? Could it be the utter disregard for the law whereby criminals no longer fear the consequences of committing a crime? And if so, would such a thing result in the increase of crime in our communities? Well, let's talk about that. Hey, welcome back to Enough with the Crazy. On September 4th, 2019, in Victorville, California, a 911 call was received from a hysterically panicked mother. On the call, the mother was quoted as saying, oh my God, get my son out of here," as she was pleading for help from what her adult son was doing to her. She was clearly panicked, in great distress, and Sheriff's Deputy Megan McCarthy was dispatched to the scene. As per testimony from Deputy McCarthy, when she arrived and was walking up to the house, quote, "The front door opened and out comes the male, the suspect, and the woman who I assume is the reporting party. And she has a knife in her hand and she's on the phone with dispatch," unquote. Now, at this juncture alone, I would think that it is completely reasonable for any police officer seeing this distressed woman with a knife in her hand to instantly assess that this is a potentially high risk situation and to then proceed with extreme caution. She goes on to state that he, the adult son, confronted her head on. Quote, "He's very, very angry. He's very upset. His fists are clenched. I walk around behind him and put his hands at the small of his back. I tell him to relax, it's okay, ask him what's going on, just to pat him down for weapons, and that set him off and began the assault. 13 seconds into our interaction, he told me, 'I will headbutt the F out of you,'" unquote. That's when he began punching her over and over again. Then, as his assault of her continued, he violently took her to the ground, continued punching her in the face, and struggled with her for her gun. After gaining possession of her gun, he pointed it at her head and pulled the trigger. Fortunately, it didn't discharge. As she then ran to find some type of cover, he was able to fire the gun and took a few shots at her. Other officers then arrived at the scene and shot him multiple times. Now, he survived his wounds and was charged with attempted murder, assaulting a police officer, negligent discharge of a firearm, resisting arrest, and several other allegations. However, on May 31st of this year, this man, Ari Young, was acquitted by a jury of all charges except the negligent discharge of a firearm, because the jury found that the deputy did not have quote unquote reasonable suspicion to detain him. Because of time served, he was released back into the public. Now look, this man was 21 years old at the time of the incident and diagnosed with schizophrenia. But despite having mental health issues, the level of his conduct with this officer clearly demonstrated that he was a danger to others, and because of that, should have, at the minimum, for his own sake, been court instructed to institutionalize treatment instead of just being released back onto the streets. In the jury instruction, the court made the issue of quote unquote reasonable suspicion very clear when it told them, quote, "You can't detain somebody because you want to do an investigation. If you want to detain somebody, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that they're engaged in criminal activity," unquote. Now, at what point does a frantic 911 call from a mother who is holding a butcher knife for protection from her own adult son, a man who is also demonstratively very angry and verbally hostile toward the deputy, not considered by the jury reasonable suspicion that he's engaged in some type of criminal activity? After all, how does a mother frantically call in 911 for help against her own adult son while holding a butcher knife to protect herself from him imply anything else but that he's acting in a way that is physically threatening to her, thereby giving the deputy a clear reason to suspect a potential crime in progress? But his defense attorney argued that the deputy did not have reasonable suspicion to justify patting down his client, and hence the issue he made it to be was whether the detention of Mr. Young was in fact legal. Because if it was not, the defense attorney said, quote, "He could punch her 100 times and it wouldn't matter," unquote. In other words, assaulting her in the extreme way that he did would be completely within his rights, and he would have no reason to fear the consequences he could face for brutally beating her and attempting to kill her. And that's the issue. How does the essence of the law become so twisted in its application that it completely justifies the type of physical assault and attempted murder this man enacted upon a female deputy, regardless of his mental condition? After all, a crime is a crime, isn't it? Or is our new progressive legal system changing the purpose of the law by justifying the committing of crimes, thereby potentially eliminating any punishment for crime? Now, anyone with an ounce of common sense would have to question this, because what would that mean to you as the everyday citizen? How do you protect yourself and your family if the law is being manipulated by progressives to benefit the criminal and not the victim? Now, you may want to think that instances like this are isolated events. However, thanks to progressive DAs and politicians who are actively working to manipulate the legal system, it is happening more and more. This man beat and attempted to kill a female police officer with the gun he took from her, and the jury decided that she was the one who committed the wrong. And here's why. California Assembly Bill 3070, which focuses on the quote unquote unfair exclusion of potential jurors, went into effect in 2022. According to the bill's language, among the preemptory challenge grounds now considered invalid for juror dismissal are, quote, expressing a distrust of or having a negative experience with law enforcement or the criminal legal system, and expressing a belief that law enforcement officers engage in racial profiling or that criminal laws have been enforced in a discriminatory manner. So basically, this says that anyone who has a personal grudge against law enforcement can now be considered a fair and impartial juror in a trial involving a law enforcement officer. How ludicrous a policy is that in the pursuit of a fair trial? And hopefully you can see how it blatantly removes the guardrail of fairness in a trial by allowing those who may hate someone to be involved in the decision of their guilt or innocence. What this new bill does is that it opens the door to a system whereby one day a racist could be allowed to sit on a jury and decide the verdict of a black person. Or where a black person who hates white people would be permitted to sit on a jury that decides the verdict of a white person. What would be deemed legally permissible in a jury would be whatever those in power at the time deemed to be acceptable, at least until the next administration of power would change it to fit whatever it is that they would want. The result of this would be the loss of foundational law and the protection of a person's right to a fair trial. Now, regardless of the fact that this man had mental issues, he attempted to kill a female deputy who was running away from him trying to get to cover. At the very least, because of the frantic 911 call placed by his own mother and his taking multiple shots at a deputy to try and kill her, it seems very clear that he is a danger to society and should not be released back into the public without having completed some type of institutionalized psychiatric care. Yet because progressive DAs and politicians are being voted into office, more and more criminals are feeling emboldened to commit crime because they know that these progressives are changing the essence of the law from the protection of the innocent to the protection of the criminal. Hence, they no longer fear the consequences they normally would have to face when caught. In cities where this is happening, crime is out of control. At the end of 2022, it was reported that overall crime in New York City was up 23.2% over prior year. According to the most recent data from the FBI, the total crime rate in San Francisco is 4,938.4 incidents per 100,000 people. That's 110.5% higher than the national rate of 2,346 per 100,000 people, and 91.34% higher than the California total crime rate of 2,581 per 100,000 people. In Seattle, the violent crime rate reached a 15-year high in 2022, surpassing the record set in 2021. In St. Louis, crime is 214% higher than the national average, which means that you have a 1 in 12 chance of being the victim of a crime there. These are all cities that have taken this progressive approach in removing the effectiveness of what punishing criminal does in our society overall to deter crime. The reality is that when you don't punish crime, you give license to it. When criminals feel like they won't be punished, they'll commit more crime. That's simply human nature. The effects of this progressive legal movement has already revealed the chaos that comes when people are led to believe that they don't have to worry about punishment for committing crimes. We've all seen the riots where people plunder and destroy businesses, where they firebomb cars and assault innocent people. We're all aware of the parades where fully naked men are permitted to march openly in the street, fully exposing themselves to little children. We have rich people in positions of great power and political office abusing kids through those who traffic children, and all of this without any legal consequences. This is the society that is being formed right beneath our noses. And if we don't return to the enforcement of law and a punishment system that is effectively used to deter crime, we are all going to one day soon be living in a system where the law will be used by those in power to manipulate and control us. And this is the sad truth of all this. As the punishment of criminals is lessened, crime will continue to increase. And as it increases, so will the probability that you and I, or someone we know and love, will one day have to be its victim. So let me know in the comments just what your thoughts are. And if you enjoy this type of content, please take the time to share it with others, as it would really help me to grow this channel. And also, please don't forget to hit that like button, to click the subscribe button, and punch that notification bell to be notified of any of all new videos. Those things will benefit me greatly. Hey, as always, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to listen. Until next time.